From mass shootings to high divorce rates to Christians falling away from their faith, some would say America appears to be falling apart at the seams of our cultural fabric. Our Heather Sells spoke with one author about what she believes got us to where we are as a nation today.
The greatest issues of our time are at the heart of a modern cultural war. Mary Eberstadt, author of Primal Screams, How the Sexual Revolution Created Identity Politics, believes some of America's biggest problems can be traced back to another huge culture war from the 60s. She joins us now. Mary, thanks for being with us today. You say that our nation has an identity crisis and the biggest question of all time is, who am I? How do you see this playing out right now in the country?
Well, identity politics has become absolutely unavoidable, whether we're talking about political parties or institutions of higher education. We're all familiar with the arguments about my gender identity, my ethnic identity, etc. So what I try to do in the book is take a step back and say, why is there this generalized panic over who am I? This is really unique to our time. And I think the answer is that this stems from the breakdown of the family in the 1960s and onward, which took away the usual way of answering this question, who am I? Because for many people in our time, the idea that I am a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a cousin without an asterisk is an idea that's harder to come by. So that, I think, is what unites all the different identity firsters, whether they're on the left or the right, whether it's about gender or ethnicity. There's this passionate flight to collective identities, and I think it's all coming from the same primordial place.
Okay, and talk a little bit more about that, because there could be a number of causes to this identity crisis that we're having right now, but why do you think it is rooted in the sexual revolution?
Well, let's stipulate first that, of course, there is racism, there is sexism, there are other forms of cruelty, and these things are always and everywhere to be opposed. But at the same time, they don't look to be the font of identity politics taken singly, any one of those things. Identity politics begins, sociologists agree, with a document published in 1977 by a group of African-American feminists. It was the first expression of identity politics, which they took to mean we must band together to fight for our interests because no one else has our back. And that's a paraphrase of what they say in the document. And what's interesting about that and deeply sad about that is that for many people, when they think about who has their backs, who wants what's best for them, we think first of the family. But this document is an expression, 1977, the first generation to come of age after the sexual revolution. It's an expression of a time when familial identity is already eroding so much that people feel like their best refuge is to cling to those who are like them. And in the years since then, we've seen an explosion of this kind of identitarianism, again, where people are fleeing into these collective identities because these identities offer them something that they're not finding elsewhere and that used to be found at home.
That is so sad. What do you think is the answer to this national fixation on identity at this point in time?
Well, you know, it's like with any malady. If you can't name it correctly, if you don't get the diagnosis right, you're not going to get the solution. And the reason I wrote Primal Screams is to try and raise awareness that what's going on in identity politics is not politics as usual. It's something much deeper. And this feeling, especially on the part of the young, that they are at sea, that they don't know who they are, is being exploited politically, I think, by people who are able to leverage that into votes and collective identities. So the first thing to do really is to raise awareness of what's going on in identity politics and hold a mirror up to people so that maybe some people will have this aha moment, like, oh, that's why I think the way I do. It's not because I can't think independently of my ethnicity or my gender or some other class to which I belong. It's because our society has become unmoored from a firm sense of self. So my hope is that the book will help some people to recover exactly that, a deeper understanding of the human person.
All right, Mary Eberstadt, author of Primal Screams, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.